is centered around having marketing conversations and also showcasing that marketing is always at the crux of everything. Today, I've got a very special guest, and I think all my guests are very special, but I've got Melusi Makhoba. I had to get that right because I didn't want to put a little bit of a twang in there. Melusi and I met when we were doing our master's degree at WITS. And I mean, this is a very long time ago, so I'm quite excited that he agreed to have a sit down with me. And as the episode goes on, you guys will understand why I've actually asked him to be part of the conversation. So, Melusi, welcome to the podcast, and thank you for accepting to sit down and have a conversation with me.
Thank you for having me, Tabisi.
Great. So, Melusi, as with everything, as African people, when we get into a space and people don't know us, we introduce ourselves. So please introduce yourself and tell people who you are and what you're about.
Oh, that sounds like I'd have to say quite a mouthful.
Please go ahead.
So Melusi Makhoba is from Durban, KZN. I grew up in a small colored community. Hence, now when COVID came into play, when I do online sessions and students see me face to face, they get confused because they say I have a colored accent.
Accent,
Yes, I grew up in a colored community in Sydenham a few years ago. And then recently I moved, actually it's not so recent now, I moved to Johannesburg in 2011 after I'd finished my postgraduate studies. I'm a very simple individual, a family man. I think my family is the most important people to me. My partner, my two daughters, and my son. I think those are the two most important people to me.
Oh, that's excellent. It's so nice to have a family man. Thank you for that introduction. So, Melusi, what I'm going to do is just lay out a scenario which I would like you to just expand on. So, because this podcast is really about telling authentic stories, not only from a personal perspective, but from you being the practitioner that you are. The purpose of it is really for us to be able to teach people on how to navigate life and the industry that we're in. Some people, the stories it could work for, and other people won't necessarily work for, but we always try and share nuggets for those that will benefit from it. So imagine this. We are sitting around a bonfire. There's 20 Ntabisings from the age of 6 to where we are right now. And we are very interested in your life story of where you started, who believed in you, what your purpose is, whether you have actually identified what your purpose is, and anything that you think would be beneficial to us as little people.
Okay, I think I'll start off with the last question you asked in terms of have I identified what my purpose is.
Yeah.
And I think to a certain extent I have. I think I'm here to contribute to society beyond me making money myself. Hence, recently I'm working with a lot of small businesses who I advise for. They always get shocked when I say, no, you don't have to pay me anything.
Yeah.
It's just my contribution to society. I help them with digital marketing and marketing services pro bono. So I think that's one of my biggest purposes in life, just to contribute beyond making money, because it's not always about money, you know. And small businesses contribute so much to South Africa as a whole.
Yeah.
And then Melusi, as I've said, born and bred in a small colored community in Sydenham, KZN. Never had the best in terms of, not say upbringing, but grew up, I would say, relatively poor, you know, and one of the most important people that have contributed to the person that I am today. I find it strange, but it's my friend from KZN, Garrett August. You know, he grew up, I would say, a bit privileged than me, but he cushioned me from a lot of things. Now that I'm older and I reflect, I think he was far more. He was beyond his time, and I'm actually a year older than him.
Yeah.
But the things that he did for me to cushion me from me really seeing how poor I really was growing up, I think he's one of the biggest contributors to my life. I've never told him this, but I
Now he
think
knows.
now he knows, you know.
It's so nice. Sorry
Yeah.
to interject. It's so nice because you're the second guest who has reflected on some things and became very appreciative of their friend. Where when they're with their friend, they actually don't tell that friend that you've actually made such an impact
Yes.
in my life. So it's so nice to.
No,
for you
no, I
guys
have,
to
I
say
have
that.
him to thank.
Yeah.
I have him to thank. You know, as I said, he cushioned me from a lot of things. You know, I always say that growing up poor, it's like every day you wake up, you tell yourself, why do I have to wake up to be so embarrassed? Like every day of your life, it feels like more of an embarrassment. But he cushioned me from a lot of things. So I think he's one of the biggest contributors to where I am today. And the man that I've become when I say I want to be very selfless in everything that I do, because it's me paying him back in a way to say, you did it for me, I will do it for other people as
Paying it
well,
forward.
where it's not always about the money. And then also I have obviously my parents and my family to thank. More importantly, my late mom. You know, I have her to thank for where I am today and the kind of person that I am, who hardly ever gives up, you know, don't give up on a lot of things. I take life as it comes,
Yeah.
and I think I've learned so much from her. And it's so strange that when I meet people, people assume that I grew up very, very privileged, because they don't expect someone who grew up like me to have the personality that I have. You know, I'm humble, yes, but I don't take. You know, usually when you grow up unprivileged, people expect you to bow down, and you
Yes.
know, but
Yes.
I'm not like that. I call it as I see it.
Yeah.
And that's thanks to my mom. She always
Yeah.
said to me, irrespective of how you grow up, but you should never allow people to walk all over you, you know. And I thank her for that. And then also from a career perspective, I think one of the most important jobs that I had growing up, because I'm a naturally shy individual. I'm very shy, but the first job I got when I was doing my undergrad, I worked as a cashier
Oh.
at the Hub Trading Company in Durban, and I did that for 5 years, and I think that kind of helped to shape the person that I am in terms of coming out of my shell, because you get to interact with customers almost every day.
Yeah.
You know, and it's part of the job. It was a weekend job for me, but I think that helped me. So I did that for 5 years. Then in 2011, I moved to Johannesburg to work for Sanral on the e-toll project. And obviously, the people in Gauteng will tell you that when it comes to e-tolls, it's still a battle till today.
Yeah.
But I was privileged to be part of that project when it first initially kicked in. I did that for also 5 years, and then I later moved on to a Brazilian international company that is in over 120 countries in South Africa. I was more of the sales executive for South Africa. So my main role there was to open distribution channels amongst all the different retailers in South Africa. I enjoyed it for 18 months, quite a stressful job. I did it for 18 months. Then after that, I decided I wanted to pursue my PhD. So the logic was, since the job was so demanding from a traveling perspective, I should maybe get something more in the academic space. So I looked at it as killing two birds with one stone. So working in academia in terms of lecturing while doing a PhD. So for me, it looked as if I would always be in the zone. There's no need to unplug from the role
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
focus on the PhD. And I have Karika to thank from Boston Media House who gave me my first lecturing opportunity. So Karika and Tammy Bucks, I think they contributed to where I am now from
Yeah.
an academic perspective and my lecturing career. And I've been doing that now, I think, for the past, 7 years now. So I did Boston Media House, worked at Vega, did Wits Business School,
Yes.
went to University of Free State for a year.
Remember.
And now I'm back here in Johannesburg and I'm working at the University of Johannesburg now.
Sure. Just to consolidate what you've mentioned from an early stage, what stood out for me is that you had people that believed in you and encouraged you, and also taught you a couple of life lessons that you've carried with you, which have made an impact and have resulted in the kind of individual that you are right now. And those are your mom and your friend. Isn't it interesting? Because it's always the case where they say friends are a little bit of a touch and go situation. And here you are talking about a friend that has helped you from a very young age. He probably didn't even know that he was contributing towards you being the person that you are today. So it very kudos to him. So now you shift in with your resoluteness, you shift into sales, and you get into various roles within the sales space. Then you move from then and you get into academia. Why did you shift from sales and into academia?
Okay, the main reason, as I've said, was that because I registered for my PhD
Yeah.
in 2017.
Yeah,
So I just wanted to be in the academic space. I thought I'd remain in the academic space while I pursue my PhD.
Yeah.
But once I'm done with that, I go back to corporate.
Yeah.
But the more I found myself in the academic space, I felt as if maybe this is where I belong, because the impact you make on all the different individuals that you see, you may not see it, but sometimes you're walking in the mall with your family, and then someone comes to you and says, "Hi, sir, do you remember me?" And they remind you of things you said in the classroom or through consultations that has inspired them to be the individuals that they are today. So I decided that, you know what, maybe the academic space is the best space for me. And how I still stay in touch with corporate, it's through the consultations that I do for the different organizations. So I'm still, in a way, killing two birds with one stone. And it also helps me because in most cases, people say academics focus more on the theory, but they're not in touch with what's happening in the industry. And then it becomes difficult for you to lecture to students to say, but these are the current trends. This is how you do a marketing plan or digital marketing plan. You only know it from the textbook. So also the killing two birds with one stone is it allows me to fully immerse myself in what's happening in industry and take those learnings back to my students. And also some of the brands that I deal with, I say for me, obviously, it's not about the money. You don't have to pay me anything, but it's about also establishing relationships. So if a student is struggling financially and needs a bursary, I know most people are just a phone call away to say, this is the problem I have. If you have money, please sponsor my student. If you have internship opportunities, I have students. So that's how it helps me as well from a lecturing and a program manager perspective.
So many links to what you're doing. Do pro bono work, which then also assists your students. should they require help with getting a job. So that's fantastic. So now we want to get deeper into you being a lecturer in education. And I'm glad that one of the things you mentioned is that sometimes when you get lectured at school and you go into the real world, it's chalk and cheese. But it's so nice to have a lecturer as yourself who focuses on practicals and also the theoretical aspect of things. Fantastic. Where do you see marketing going in the next 5 years?
Ooh, that's a difficult a difficult question to answer. But one thing I can say is in the next 3 to 5 years, marketing is more about experiences now. You know, so you gotta give experience has become a competitive advantage. So it's about giving your consumers an immersive experience. Hence, one of my key research focuses is on augmented reality, virtual reality, and mixed reality. That way, marketing is kind of heading towards just giving consumers that immersive experience. But it will still remain the same in terms of how it is now. But to differentiate yourself, give them that immersive experience, and that becomes more of a competitive advantage for you, especially with this generation, Gen Z, because that's where most of the action is happening, the digital natives. So brands need to start thinking about that. For us who are millennials, we're still there, but the Gen Zs are the future. So give consumers that experience because that is what they're looking for the most.
So how are you getting your students ready for the next 5 years?
I lecture third years and postgrad.
Yeah.
So I like saying that I don't want my students when they leave to say they're looking for an internship or graduate program.
Yeah.
I always say I like creating plug and plays.
Yeah.
You know, someone that has created a marketing plan in the classroom environment. And that's why I try, even when I set assignment, I bring real clients with real problems. And then the assignment is based on that, not a case study on an international brand, but I bring South African and African brands that they can work on. So then when they go to interviews and so forth, they're not talking about textbook example. They can say the brand and say, this South African brand had this issue. This was the problem. Me and my group, we created a marketing plan, and this is what we developed for them. And some of it, actually, brands do end up implementing the strategies that the students come up with.
I think you were going to move to another point, but before you do, are you then able to give us examples of some of the marketing plans that were developed in your classroom and brands adopted them?
Not really, because I don't know why most companies behave like this, but most of them tend to make us sign a non-disclosure. That's the one thing I've noticed. I've never really figured out why they want us to sign a non-disclosure, because when they work with big agencies, there's hardly ever such. I don't know. Maybe it's because it's students doing the work. I never understood that concept. But most of the brands, they tend to always say, "We'll sign a non-disclosure."
Okay.
To obviously not mention what was done.
It is a bit odd because I mean, as you say, when these students go into the work environment, they need to have a portfolio of evidence, right, from a practical perspective. So if their hands and feet are tied, how do they then show whoever's going to employ them that they've actually worked on a particular brand when they were students?
Usually from a UJ perspective, if we have industry clients, so all of the students get certificates to say they worked on such a project with this particular brand. They mentioned the brand, but obviously the details is not, so they get a certificate to say they were in the top group, for example, or they worked on this brand. And then the winning group also gets a certificate as well to say they were the top group in relation to this to this project that was
Okay.
done.
COVID happened and the world realized how important marketing is. The world decided to put aside money to invest in marketing because they saw the importance of it. How did that affect the education sector and how you guys are lecturing marketing now that it's in the forefront and people have various needs with regards to marketing?
I would say the only thing that COVID did, it showed us that we could do lessons online. We had the infrastructure for that. But I'm not much of a fan of online lectures. I always say for me, the lesson happens in the class. I like saying the slides are just for show. But the lesson is here within the classroom in terms of how everyone thinks. Because you would know that when it comes to marketing to a certain extent, there's no right or wrong a strategy. As long as it's informed by good insight and good research, history becomes the judge in the future. Hence, I always say the lesson is there. That has done for marketing is that brands now are doing a lot of environmental scanning because to a certain extent, as I used to say to my students, some of the businesses that failed because of COVID-19, why did they fail? I like saying I blame the marketer for that. And they would say, why? Because COVID was completely out of their control. And I'd say, but if the marketer was doing environmental scanning and scanning the macro environment from a pestle perspective, they could have predicted this and said, but this is what is happening. And if it comes to South Africa, what strategies do we have? So most brands were reactive as opposed to proactive.
Yes.
And the reason for that is environmental scanning wasn't done. And the beauty also for us in South Africa is that this started off in other countries first. Then came to South Africa. So we still had that gap too, but we didn't use it. And when it finally came, lockdown and so forth, now everyone is scrambling. They don't know what to do. And I think some of the brands that did survive were those that did the environmental scanning and were prepared for whatever could come. So it kind of cushioned the blow. They did suffer, but it cushioned the blow, hence they're still here today. But those that didn't do it, I blame the marketer for that.
It's something to think about. So you engage a lot with Gen Zs, right? Maybe also a couple of millennials because of the postgraduate offering. How different are marketers between the two generations, the millennials and the Gen Zs?
I would say the biggest difference between the two cohorts is that I'd say Gen Zs prefer brands that are purposeful.
Yeah.
So purposeful brands, again, speaking to what I also stand for, contributing to society beyond making money. So most of the Gen Zs want to work on such brands that are purposeful and so forth. Whereas with us, who are millennials, or most millennials, they just choose based on maybe you like the brand.
Got the job.
I got the job and so forth. But Gen Zs are very particular in choosing. So I think that's one of the biggest differentiators between the two cohorts. And then also when it comes to Gen Zs, how I lecture to my postgrad is actually quite different to how I lecture to my undergrad. Because to a certain extent, when you lecture more to the Gen Zs and the undergrads, there's also got to be an element of you have to empathize, you need to inspire, you need to provide emotional support as well. So what you do for those 45 minutes or 1 hour, 30 minutes, you'd find that 60% of it is the actual contents that you cover. But the other aspect is empathize, it's the soft skills.
Yeah.
And I've learned also that the students go through a lot in their personal lives. So I always try to have that human connection to say, if you want to give up and say, you know what, life is too much in terms of my studies and so forth, but find inspiration to say, okay, I don't have much to give anymore as an individual, but there's Umelus as my lecturer who believes in me so much. Let me just do it for
For
him.
him.
So I do a lot of man management as well, and I'm very good with names.
Yeah.
I learned that when I lecture in a class of 80 people, I can know all 80 names. And again, that helps with that personal touch,
Yeah.
because when you call someone by their name, they get the shock of their life to say,
Yeah.
but he knows my name out of 80 individuals. So they feel noticed as well.
Yeah.
And that goes a really long way.
Yeah. The things that you've touched on about Gen Z are really topical things, particularly around soft skills, because this is the time where we are talking about toxic environments, toxic bosses, people that are not empathetic, the different styles of leadership. And there's always a comparison between maybe a millennial boss and a Gen Z boss, right? But truth of the matter is that, yes, there's a Melusi at varsity who remembers your name, who contributes towards success intentionally, that is, even though you go through hills and valleys. But when you go into the corporate space, Melusi is not going to be there. How do you get your students ready for the corporate space? Because it's different people, different ages, different personalities, and they won't be somebody like you.
Ish, that's a tough one, because it's true that most bosses are millennials, and most don't have the soft skills. They don't empathize. They're very target and KPI
Oriented.
driven, and there's not much of that human element. And I think this is a problem that actually the whole world is facing. Hence, in most industries, Gen Zs will do a job for 1 month, 2 months.
And they leave.
If they say the environment is toxic, it leaves, and they leave. So I think it's something for the industry to look at, for the HR practitioners to look at, because if people are leaving so many times, then something has to change within the organizational culture. It becomes very difficult for us to say no, but in the real world, this and this and this. Just that us as millennials, we took it, not that it was correct for your boss and so forth to behave like that, but you just took the blow and you went home.
Carried on.
And you carried on. No one ever goes to check, but with those millennials that went through such, what is it that they're going through? Maybe some are going through depression and so forth and so forth. No one ever asks that question. So I think maybe the solution to that is not to change these individuals that empathize and so forth, but it's up to those bosses to
To also
reflect
change.
and say, but you still need that human approach, and you just need to apply more of design thinking. Because that's what we teach marketers as well, to say, when you have a brief, use design thinking to solve the problem. So why can't the managers and so forth apply the same thing?
So in most of your answers, you always bring in marketing terms, which might not necessarily be clear for people. And I think it's important for me to just step back a little bit and just ask you to expand.
Design thinking, in the most simplest terms, it's a human-centered approach to solving a problem. I always like using the example of a movie I once watched called Split. It's about this guy with 23 personalities, multiple personalities. When I watched that movie, I began to appreciate the craft of acting. But the story behind it is that before he shot that movie, he applied design thinking. How? He spent some time in a mental institution with people with multiple personalities, and he immersed himself within their space. Then when you watch the movie, you begin to appreciate the craft where he's able to switch 23 personalities in one scene. And that's what design thinking is for me. Actor could just have decided that I'm an actor, I can do this. But he used design thinking where he put himself in the shoes of the problem, a human-centered approach also, and was able to do so well with that movie from an acting perspective. But in a nutshell, just human-centered approach and put yourself in the shoes of the problem. Because in most cases with society, we like to solve problems from our perspective, but don't understand how it's most likely to affect that specific individual that you're trying to solve the problem for.
Yeah.
And we see this with most of the brands as well, where the marketing communication or the CSI, or when it comes to even digital divide, someone that has access to all digital tools, they assume that the individual would have access to such. They don't use that design thinking, human-centered approach when solving the problem. For me, so just in a nutshell, just human-centered approach.
And to you, within the South African landscape, which brand sticks out from a design thinking perspective?
I would say design thinking, because it works hand in hand with innovation.
Yeah.
I would say one of the most innovative brands in the South African context that has applied design thinking, for me, is Mug and Bean.
Yeah.
Mug and Bean. Yes.
Okay.
I'd say in the South
Expand on
African
that.
context, that's the most innovative brand that I've seen. So I love coffee. I drink coffee a lot. When I used to work in Bloemfontein, because my family was still here in Johannesburg, I used to travel every Monday morning. I'd drive 4 hours to Bloem. Friday evening, I'd drive back to Johannesburg. And I bank with Standard Bank, so I get those points when I go to Caltex Astron to fill up. So that's why I fill up. And there they have a Seattle coffee shop, so that's why I would buy my cappuccino for the road. But one thing I noticed there was that the people that work at the Seattle coffee shop already knew the people that came to order. So it was like, all they had to say was, I'll have the usual. Some stock up for the office on their way to work. So when I looked at that, I was like, but they know you come here almost every day, but you still got to fill in the information, go pay by the cash, and then come back. And I just thought this is quite tedious for these individuals.
Yeah.
And a few months later, I hear Mug and Bean has introduced coffee by subscription.
Oh.
So you pay $2.50, you get 10 cups of coffee, of cappuccino, whatever it could be for the month.
Yeah.
And for me, I found that quite innovative, because again, innovation is taking something from a completely different industry. When you think subscription service, you think of your gym membership and so forth.
Yes.
And that such a concept has never been applied in their space.
Yeah.
But for them to fully understand that, I felt as if they probably read my mind when I was wearing my marketing cap on and standing at Seattle coffee shop and saying, but this is tedious,
Yeah.
But now you pay once off, you sorted for the month. Then you don't have to do that back and forth. So for me, in the South African context, I would say Mug and Bean is the most innovative brand that has applied design thinking by having that subscription service for coffee.
That's excellent. It would be nice to actually just get a little bit of a case study from them, just to understand how this is working. You are enjoying it, but is it giving them the benefit
Yes.
that they are after?
Would be interesting to see, but maybe they could suffer from their first mover advantage.
Could be, yeah.
But to a certain extent, having first mover advantage, sometimes it's not an advantage at all.
Very true, but also it's also understanding that as an innovator, it's the long game, right? So you'll innovate, but you need to be consistent in what you're offering, and you also understand why you started that thing. Yes, there will be new entrants that adopt that innovation.
Yes.
And they will have their results in whichever way. But as I said, it would be very interesting to get somebody from Mug and Bean to actually talk about that
Yeah.
innovation and how it's working for them. Do they want to continue from a long-term perspective, or was it a short period? And how
Yeah.
many people took it up? Yeah.
I'm not sure how many took it up, but from where I sit, that's where the industry is going to go. So you begin to see the other coffee brands, especially those that have partnered with petrol stations.
Yes.
They will take up that more because
Yeah.
it's good for the person that grabs their coffee on their way to work.
Yeah.
So I see that taking off
Yeah.
a lot.
And how long has this been happening?
Since late last year, if I'm not
Oh,
mistaken.
is it?
Yes.
Okay.
There's quite
I
a few
just wish-
billboards.
Really? That
Yeah.
I was actually gonna go into that to say I just wish they would make a little bit of a noise
Yeah.
about that so we know. You
Yeah.
know, we are also, some of us are coffee lovers, but I haven't seen it. Where are the billboards?
The one I know closest to me is the one in Jansmat, just before Republic
Okay.
and Winnie Mandela
Winnie
Drive.
Mandela. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's the one I've seen so far. I've
yeah.
only seen one so far.
Okay, but it could be that their placement is based on the need and the segmentation. So probably you guys buy a lot of coffee that way. That's why they're probably advertising. Whereas for us on this side, we don't necessarily generate whatever.
Or
sales.
maybe they were strategic by having it there because it's next to Caltex.
Probably
Way
because they
within-
are their close proximity.
Yes, so
Uh-huh.
with the Caltex, where the Caltex is, there's a Seattle coffee shop.
Yeah.
Then just up the road, not even a kilometer away, there's another Seattle coffee shop.
Okay.
So they have the billboard just in between the two.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the strategic move to have it there, but I don't know. But that's the main one I've seen. But I haven't seen anything else from the other marketing channels.
Okay. It's evident to see that you're very passionate about lecturing and making an impact in your students' lives. Is there anything else that you want to do in your life outside of marketing and lecturing?
I think that's the easy one. For me, how I always say that no amount of success would ever compensate for not being successful at home within your own household. You know, so it's no good being well known, this marketing guy doing so much for the industry, for his students, but from my own home front, my kids, my partner don't get to experience such. So for me, I would say I just want to be the best father, the best dad to my kids. For them, when they hear the name dad, it should be a synonym for love.
Yeah.
That's first and foremost. To be the best partner as well to my partner, because I travel a lot. She's always there with the kids. It can be very mentally draining. So that's for me what I'd want to, just to be the best dad and the best father, the best family man.
Oh, that's great. That's very nice. That's heartwarming.
No, family is the most important.
Yeah.
It's the most important thing.
I can definitely pick up that you spend a lot of time with Gen Zs, and they are mushy. Like my dad would say, "Oh, you guys are just so soft these days." So that's nice. So just going back to you being a marketer and being a lecturer, how does a good marketer make an impact on brands that they work on? What are the things that a marketer should consider when they get a brief to execution and evaluation?
Ish, that's a tough one. But I always like saying that the answer lies in the research. You know, I always say if I'm given 8 hours to chop a tree, I'd spend 7 hours chopping my axe. So if the research is proper, then everything else becomes easy from there. So spend a lot of time on the research. And now the beauty of the current era that we're in, we deal a lot with big data. And I think most organizations that I've dealt with, they struggle to find individuals that are able to crunch that big data and get proper insight. So you have all this information, but you're not using it because there's no one that can crunch this data and pull very good insight. So I always say, do the research. And also, everywhere that you go, you should always be wearing your marketing cap on. I always say to students that you guys spend a lot of time on social media enjoying the comments. But you don't realize that when you're enjoying those comments, that is social media listening, because you begin to identify common themes. And that ends up becoming a basis for informing a strategy. So wear your marketing cap on everywhere, because that is where you'll find the insights. You're practically doing research. So when you're wearing it everywhere you go, you are doing research. As in my case, I was wearing my cap while buying a cappuccino, and I was seeing these opportunities. Little did I know that there's someone else who thinks like me, maybe from a mug and bean, that they created the cappuccino by subscription. So what I could say is just do the research and fully understand who your target audience is, understand their pain points and so forth. And if you understand their pain point, who they are holistically, it becomes easier for you to customize a strategy to those individuals. And then also, most people are so focused on digital, and they see digital and traditional as two separate things, but they need to always be working together. They're there to support each other. Hence, I get shocked when I'm consulting an industry where there's the digital marketing department sitting with IT, there's marketing on their own, and they get their own budget. You need to do this. You get your own budget from the traditional marketing perspective. You need to do this. But these need to work together to support each other. And some brands, they think digital is mainly for the middle to upper class individual. But they forget that there's things like mobile marketing, where when I once said to the brand, but you're catering more for people between LSM 1 to 4 who don't have smartphones, and you're telling me that, no, these guys will not use digital. But I'm like to them, but there's mobile marketing. And when it comes to mobile, there's something we call a please call me. Then they're scratching their mind. What the hell is that? But again, if you apply design thinking, human-centered, put yourself in the shoes of the problem, in the shoes of those consumers, you will notice that they still use please call me, and it's still a very effective marketing tool, and mobile falls under digital marketing. Then it just changes the whole narrative.
It's just an enhanced
so just
thingy, like a bit of innovation. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying they just need to work together more. Not in silos.
In silos. You've shared quite a bit. Is there anything else that you would want a marketing professional to know or leverage off of outside of design thinking, data, and all the things that you had spoken about? Is there anything else that we as marketers actually need to probably keep an eye on and better ourselves by exploring it?
I think I've kind of covered most, but marketers should know this, but I've noticed most don't, and they become very reactive as opposed to being proactive. I always have this rule where I say, always be aware your competitor today may not be your competitor tomorrow. And someone from a completely different industry will become or could become your competitor one day when you wake up. And me, one of the best, funny enough, I don't own it, the best inventions and one of the best disruptors is actually the air fryer. Then I look at brands like Sunfoil, who, when they would do their marketing plans before, they focused on canola and all of
Yes.
these all competitors that they were competing with. But little did they know that something in the, I don't know, electronics industry
Electronics. Yes.
will end up becoming their biggest competition. And now I see, when I travel, I see a lot of these billboards. For example, if I'm going into Soweto, they
Yeah.
say, Magunya in the air fryer, this child is trying to kill me. If I'm going to Florida, samosas in the air fryer, this child is trying to kill me.
Yeah.
If I'm going towards Krugersdorp side, a Cook Sisters in the air fryer, you know.
But
You
they're
know, but they're
reactive.
reactive
Yeah.
because the air fryer has taken over,
Yeah.
and
It's
they
got a
doing
bigger market share now.
yeah, they have quite a big market share, and now those are the products that we know when we're making amakwinya, samosas.
Yes.
We drown them in oil,
Yes.
but now with the air fryer,
You don't
there's,
need
you know,
to.
so just always have that at the back of your mind,
Yeah.
that there's always new things that are coming into play. But again, it takes me back to my point where environmental scanning is very, very critical. You know, so always be scanning your environment, looking at pestle, because there you have no control. You just gotta adapt. So if you can predict, then it becomes much easier. I remember a few years back, I went to a car show in China, and I saw the Haval and the Cherry. And I came back to South Africa, and I told a friend of mine that works for one of the brands, a car manufacturer brands, I said, you need to be careful. There's this brand that's coming, and it's going to disrupt a lot of things. It's a Chinese brand. And then he laughed and he said, oh, Chinese, you know. But now look at what they're doing. Look at the innovation that they're doing, even with their pricing. A strategy with prime minus 7%. Now it makes it affordable for most individuals, you know. So they're disrupting, and then may not be taking much, but they're taking a bit of market share from some of these big brands.
Yeah.
So always environmental scanning for me is the most critical thing.
Thank you, lecturer. Before we close off, I always ask my guests, if you were to write a brief about yourself, what would that brief look like? 1. 2, how would you prefer that brief is executed? And what would be the theme song to your execution if it requires a theme song?
Ish.
And who would play the lead?
Who would play the lead?
That's if you're going to make anything with motion.
Ish. I've never really gave that much thought. But I think maybe the tone, for example, would be positive and inspiring. You know, your typical Nike ads with Casta, with Serena, people who went against, you know, all odds, you know, and they got to where they are. And I don't think I would have a song, actually. I would have one of my favorite poems, a poem that I've loved from a young age, and it has kept me going. And whenever I feel down, actually, some people listen to music, some people sleep. Me, I read that poem, and sometimes I read it until I cry. You know, the way it touches me so much. It's a poem by Tupac, The Rose That Grew from a Crack in the Concrete. So I wouldn't have the song, but I'd have someone reciting that poem, because to say about a rose that can grow from a crack in the concrete, proving nature's laws wrong. You know, so he, against all odds, he got to where he was. You know, and I wish people could see where I come from to fully understand, to say, but this environment, you know, the way it is, you know, they would fully understand what one had to go through to get to where they are. So to someone sitting there, they'd say, but this guy is just a mere lecturer. Why does he, speak like this? He's maybe not the man he thinks he is, but obviously success is personal to each individual, and we define success very differently. So for me to have come out of that environment, I would say for me, I would consider myself, maybe not successful per se, but I've come a long way. Hence, that poem resonates with me so much, and I see myself as that rose.
Yeah.
Yes, and where I come from being that concrete,
Yeah.
but I managed to grow out of it.
That's nice. You're so mushy.
Mushy. What is mushy?
It's always like the hot stuff.
No, I think it's my daughters.
Oh, they've softened you.
They've softened me up very, very, very much.
Nice.
Yeah, I think ever since I had my daughters, I've changed. I used to be very, hard on the exterior, very.
You were, but that's what I remember. You were.
Yeah. No,
but
I used to be, but my daughters have really, really softened me up. But also, I was hard because it's more of a defense mechanism, because I know how soft and emotional I am.
Yeah.
So it's just more of a defense as well, to say just stay away from me.
Your self-preservation.
Yes. But my daughters have made me, explore that a bit more, where I'm aware of my emotions, and obviously my partner as well. She always says I need to express my emotions more and communicate better as well.
And as you're speaking, I just want to ask two more questions. Do you think the softness and connecting to the emotions is important for brands to consider?
I think it depends. It depends. I don't think it's that important, but it depends on the kind of brand that you are. For example, we wouldn't expect such from a Harley Davidson, because it's rough, it's rugged, or cheap. But you'd find there's a lot that they do, maybe from an emotional connection perspective, from a CSI perspective, but they just don't ever show that a lot. I don't think it's that important.
Really?
For brands.
It's so interesting that you're saying that, because a lot of marketers right now are just saying the best way to attain and keep customers is if you aim for the heart. So when you are now saying it's not so important, it's literally going against the grain, like the individual that you are. Do you maybe want to expand on that a little bit?
When it comes to branding and creating marketing communication, you're taught to use the sandwich approach.
Yeah.
Logic, emotion, logic.
Yeah.
So I mean, in the sense that it's not that important, because you can't just only use emotion.
Yeah.
So there's the logic to say why you must consume my brand.
Yeah.
The emotional touch point in terms of why. Then again, the logic again. So I still say it's not. It depends. Depends on the brand and how you've positioned yourself as well. Because maybe you'll be targeting like people, as you said, like your dad, who say, no, but you're soft, you that, you that. But now when a brand begins to do that, then it creates challenges. It reminds me of the case of Budweiser in the US, in terms of what they did by being pro. What's the term? I forget the term, but Budweiser did a whole campaign, sponsored transgenders in the US. They were for the cause and so forth, but forgot who the typical Budweiser customer is, and now they're struggling in the US because no one wants to consume the beer anymore. They don't want to be associated. You see the risk.
Yeah.
So I try to say that maybe it must be specific to different brands.
Yeah.
Because those people that probably drink Budweiser in America are tough guys and so forth, and now associating with
There's
such a movement,
transgender.
it
Yeah.
created challenges. Hence, I say, be careful of using emotions
Yeah.
a lot, because also consumers, they can pick up if you're not
Genuine.
being genuine.
Mm.
So use it if it aligns to your positioning, but if it
Mm.
doesn't, there's no need to use it. You
Mm.
know, you can show consumers what you do from an emotional aspect
Mm.
through your CSI, through your sustainability as well.
Mm.
You know, so you can show it through that. But if it doesn't align to your brand,
Don't do it.
there's no need. There's no need to use it.
This is so interesting for me, and I enjoy having these conversations. Outside of the emotional connection, the pros and cons of it from a brand perspective, as you were speaking, what also hit me is that as marketers, we also need to be very careful of what is topical out there and the it thing to do. So as you're making examples of Budweiser, I don't even think in my mind it wasn't even an emotional connection thing, but it was probably the time where transgender was a topical thing in the market. People wanted to create awareness and whatever, and then they then decided to say, well, we also want to show that we also support transgender without considering the big data that we've got and being customer centric. So yeah, it's something to note as professionals as well. Don't go with the wind.
Yeah, no, don't go with the wind. Stay true
Yeah.
to your brand.
Yeah.
And there's one thing I also like saying, which obviously people always never take it so well, but when I speak freely. I like saying we marketers, we shouldn't be afraid to speak. I also like saying to brands, going back to your point about if something is it's a topic, it's a trend, now you want to jump on it,
Yeah.
you want to do this, you want to do that.
Yeah.
I always say, as a marketer, you must know what your brand is, and you should never prostitute your brand. You know,
Yeah.
I said
Because you're trying to get the followers. Now you want to prostitute your brand.
yes,
Yes,
no,
that's true.
stay cool to your brand. The ones that are for you will stay with you. The ones that are not for you,
Yeah.
it's still fine. But the core of business is what you want to create brand loyalty, so they come back, repeat purchase, referrals, and so forth. So stay true to who you are.
I could stay true to my brand and then a disruptor, for instance, like a Haval comes on board and just completely disrupts by going with what is happening out there, wherever the wind blows. And they keep getting market share, and the market share continuously increases, and they're taking my loyal customers. How do I then make sure that I stay true to my brand? Because I'm losing people, I'm not making as much money. And I think business also comes in and says, but I mean, marketing is not doing what marketing is supposed to do. The business is not making money and the likes.
When introducing something new, I forget the term. I think they're called innovators, or it's innovators, early adopters. I forget how
And
it goes.
laggards.
Yes, but I think it's the innovators that are always quick. If something is new, they want to jump to it. Then it eventually moves. But with some of these brands, they only stay with those individuals that are innovators, for example, that always want to try new things, but never gets to the early adopters, late adopters stage. So it's still fine, you know. You're not really losing market share per se. You will lose them for that time being, but in some cases they end up returning to your brand. But also brands need to do a lot from a customer relationship perspective. You know, it's not, I always say, once the sale is made, that's where the hard work begins. It's easy to get someone, but it's very difficult to
Keep them.
to keep them. So you need to be doing more from a customer relationship perspective to maintain. Also you must understand what is it that your consumers want. In some cases, in most businesses, the 80-20 rule applies, where 80% of your profit come from 20% of your customers. And then that 80% is giving you 20. And in some instances, you find it's that 80% that's giving you 20% that is not really loyal to you, that keep jumping around.
Yeah.
But if you really look at the bottom line in terms of your profit, you're not really being affected, because that 20% that's giving you 80, you're taking really good care of them. Then it's very difficult for them to leave. So don't, keep true to what you do, but also keep your ears in terms of what is it that the customers want. How are they changing, how are they evolving. Then it becomes easier for you to customize your offering to cater for them, and find good relationship marketing strategies. I always use my bank when I travel. That's when I truly appreciate my bank. Now I'm there in the library lounge and I'm feeling important. I'm like, no, I'll never leave my bank. It's those those little things. But that's how they maintain the relationship. If I get angry, there's library lounge. Oh, okay, it's fine. I'll get over it. So find those little things, and obviously gone are the days of also mass customization. So that personal touch also becomes very important. Some brands, even on your birthday, they don't leave it to just a SMS. They go above and beyond to keep you. And those things become very, very important to us as customers.
That is so true. I think I've really enjoyed. I don't think I know. I've enjoyed this conversation, and I would want for it to carry on for long, because I want to go deeper and deeper. But I know that you've got things to do. But I think it would be remiss of me not to have another session with you, probably a different one, in a sense where we've got marketing students engaging with you, and for us to actually listen to them on what is it that they actually need outside of just being taught about a particular principle. Because as you said earlier, it's a culmination of a number of things. It's you educating them from a textbook perspective, but it's also you educating them on how to navigate life, and also being educated on how to self-manage, right? Purely because you are there and you continuously state that I'm here to support you. I'm your pillar. Use me as your pillar, because somebody else was my pillar when I was growing up. So I really, really appreciate the time that you put aside for me, and sharing your wisdom, and also the things that you've learned, which you are now sharing with other people. I really wish you well in your journey. I'll continue to follow you. I remember first time you started lecturing, I'm like, he's a lecturer now, but it's really beneficial, and it's nice because you were in corporate, now you're lecturing. So it's not only just a theoretical thing. And that's very important, because for us as millennials, we focused on theory. And then when you got into the work environment, it was a total shock, because you also try and remember the stuff that you studied at school, but the environment is so different. How do I then apply these things? But with time, you then realize that, oh, okay, this is how I plug it in. So I appreciate you. and wish you well. I don't know if there's anything that you want to say,
No,
parting words.
No. I just want to say thanks for the opportunity. And then obviously, if there's marketing students that are watching the podcast or will watch the podcast, the only thing I could say is everywhere you go, always be wearing your marketing cap on, because there could be insight in something that in the little things that you take for granted, but there's insights that you get from there. Example with me, some of the best strategies I come up with actually come from my toddlers. I learn so much from them, and I implement and I tell clients we need to do this. But through having learned through my toddlers, because even when I'm interacting with them, I'm always wearing my marketing cap on. So that's the first one. Secondly, you students need to spend more time outside the classroom as well to see what is happening. Example, a few weeks back, I was giving a keynote address at the Hostex show that was held at the Gallagher State. And I encouraged my students to go there, because I said to them, most of these brands, they at this trade show trying to advertise their product, it means there's something wrong that is happening from a marketing perspective. Hence, they're spending so much money to be here. So for you as a student, you should go to this, see the different brands, find out what's their problem, and maybe put an offer, because you'll never get a chance to sit down with the founder or CEO of an organization, but they're there at that point. And then you tell them, I'm a marketing student, I'm doing my final year, I'm doing my postgrad. I see your brand, I've never heard of it, but I would like to assist you. Again, pro bono. I always say, don't be quick to rush for the money. Get the experience, the money will come on its own. You don't even have to chase it, but once you have that experience and that brand equity to leverage on. So I said, go and speak, and I encourage them to do trade shows, whatever it could be. Attend these events and interact with people and offer your services for free, because what you need the most is the experience and then to learn. And if they afford you those opportunities, even if they offer to pay you 50,000 a month, but the most important thing for you is the experience at that point, not the money. The money will come at a later stage. So for those students, I just say, wear your marketing cap on, attend industry event, interact with individuals, especially for the top students. The top A students, they're quite good with the theory, but they fail to articulate themselves in the interview. I've seen this. Then in interviews, sit down there, but you were top of your class, a cum laude student, but you can't articulate yourself. Why? Because you've never left that university environment. So you struggle to express yourself. Then the C student or the D student gets the opportunity because they're comfortable also in articulating themselves. So please go out to these events, interact with people, find solutions, wear your marketing cap on. And that's the main advice I could give. And also take care of your health as well, and your family is most important.
Thank you very, very much. I had said we were closing it, but as you were speaking, so much came up from just a life and marketing perspective, but I won't continue. Thank you, everybody, for watching. This was such a great conversation with Melusi. We'll see you in the next chapter.